Mr. Saran, I wanna actually ask you the same question that Isabel asked on a panel yesterday, and then we also asked our economics minister a similar question, and Isabel asked the question is, who's waiting for Europe? So, and then I continued at the question, who's waiting for Germany? And Robert Habeck seemed to think that everyone's waiting for Germany to take back our global leader role. What do you think?
Look, we are betting on Germany. I truly believe that this continent and the Indian future is deeply interlinked. But I don't believe Europe is betting on the rise and the emergence of India and some other actors. Europe has firmly resolved, the Europe businesses have firmly anchored themselves to China's future, and they are stubbornly refusing to move away from that direction. They are not expeditionary enough to look at the new opportunities that are arising in different parts of the world, and they're playing very safe. Someone was talking about growth, right? Well, you don't grow if you take 2 months off every year. It's impossible to meet anyone between July and August in this continent, in this part of the world. You're not going to grow if you're going to be sleeping for 2 months in a year. People ask me, how is India growing at 8%? We work many hours a day.
Well, you're going actually quite deep into our, I guess, society order.
No, I was just a comment from the previous panel, where one of the panelists had emphasized on growth. I think Europe needs, the only resource Europe is lacking today is not critical minerals, it's critical thinking. Europe is one of the largest economies. It is powerful, it can define the future, it can shape the agenda, and yet it allows itself to be browbeated by anyone and everyone into following other people's lead. I think Europe needs to have an identity in a sense of self that is commensurate with the $20 trillion constellation that it represents. And I think that is missing in Europe. We are waiting for that Europe, and we are betting on that Europe. And we hope Europe notices that there is a subcontinent of 1.5 billion people that is moving from $4 trillion to $10 trillion in the next 10 years. And that offers an opportunity so that you can get over your China addiction, you can start diversifying, and you can start betting on right people and nice people.
Well, I guess I'm also quite sure there's also nice people in China. So just to make that point clear. So Benedikt Franke, you are, I guess, like I said, you're CEO of Munich Security Conference. You had a conference earlier this year that was not easy because the times are very critical. When you look back at it now, is, let's say, the rising of other countries the most interesting that we've been seeing? Maybe we start there.
Can I start by saying how much I love being on a panel with Samir, because he's probably the only one that makes me look quite insane, which is absolutely fantastic. Thanks, Samir. Yeah, so the Munich Security Conference 2024 was all about the need to include the Global South. Yeah. For us, it wasn't as much the invasion of Ukraine that was the wake-up call. It was really the UN General Assembly vote a week later, where we were all thrilled that 142 countries said, no, it's not okay to attack and kill your neighbor. And, 5 countries, the usual suspects, said, no, perfectly all right to invade and kill your neighbor. But it was 38 countries representing more than half the world's population that abstained. They all abstained for different reasons. But at the end of the day, I think it's pretty clear to say that more than half of the world currently doesn't believe in the global order that we've become addicted to. Mm-hmm. And the Munich Security Conference tries to do its part in, trying to figure out why that is the case. And what do these 38 countries really have in common? Mm-hmm. That's not a lot. Mm-hmm. So there isn't a consolidated global South.
Maybe we jump there. What do they have in common?
I think they have a frustration in common. They have a legitimate concern in common that the global order does not work for them, in fact, structurally disadvantages them. And I think they also have a narrative in common. First of all, this rules-based international order that we all love most of them weren't independent when the rules were made. Second, the rules don't work for them. Look at the different debt level and the money you need to get rid of that debt. And look at how we are adhering to the rules. Look at our double standards. Why do we treat, the ICC verdict against Putin differently from the one against Netanyahu? Why do we treat the war in Ukraine different from the war in Tigray? I mean, they have very, very clear...
Well, there are reasons, though.
They are, but the point is, we are not very good at explaining them, and we are not very good at taking them along, and we believe we need to get a lot better at taking them along.
And I'm also not saying we do not have double standards. I'm also quite sure that's the truth. When you're looking from your perspective, like I said, from the outside in, is that something that you would subscribe to, that you said that's actually what's happening?
No, actually, these were my notes that he read out. So
you're welcome.
These were exactly my thoughts as well on the commonality between those who don't necessarily agree with you. It is a genuine grievance against how A, the rules have been framed, B, how they have been implemented, and C, who has been given exemptions from following those rules. If you are sitting in my part of the world, for me, the problem did not begin with Ukraine. It actually began with Afghanistan. That was highly problematic. That you did a deal with the devil, and then you left a country overnight, and then your agencies return there and they demand women's rights. What were you expecting when you did the deal with the government that is in charge of Kabul? You were expecting them to be promoting women's rights? I mean, this is ridiculous, right? So you knew what you were getting into. You closed your eyes because it was expedient to leave Kabul, and you walked away overnight, and you had those terrible scenes out of Afghanistan. For me, that was problematic. But location matters. So if I get more affected based on what happens in my neighborhood, and similarly you get affected what's happening in Ukraine. The distance is pretty much the same between Delhi and Kabul and Berlin and the borders with Russia. So my point here is that there is a genuine problem. We have a problem. We have to first admit that the rules that were framed have served the first billion well. 500 million in the Atlantic system, that is the Americans and some Europeans, and 500 million collateral beneficiaries, some in China, some in India, some in other parts of the world. But basically it has served a billion elite of the world well, and it has not served the next 7.5 billion. Those next 7.5 billion are now demanding a reset. Now, either you allow for that reset and have a new conversation. For example, the G20, which has now become a more important body than the G7. For example, I'm just giving you one of the examples where a much larger constellation of actors are speaking. Or create new institutions where one country, one vote becomes the norm. But you cannot have the victors of World War II and the colonial powers of that era define our lives. Okay. For me, the UN Security Council represents the continuation of a colonial project. Colonial powers and their allies are still the ones who sit on that particular council. And for me, that is exactly the council that needs to be demolished if a new world order and new rules need to emerge.
Okay, but if we continue on that thought, what's next? I mean, like, if the rules that we have right now do not or should not apply to countries that for sure have been suffered through those rules and through what has been done to them, do we just wait for new rules to fall into place, or who's gonna check?
Well, I can take a go for it. I can make a go for it. I think what we really need to do is that those who were in charge till now, we need to pension them off. They need to be retired. They've done a good job over the last 75 years. Now we need new faces, new voices, new blood. And I'll give you an example, a working example. If you look at the two G20 presidencies of the last 2 years, Indonesian and Indian, and now of course you have the Brazilian who are in charge, but we haven't reached the outcome yet. But if you look at the Indonesian and Indian presidencies, I think they were a remarkable effort on diplomacy, where in a polarized world, where we couldn't agree on anything, both Indonesia and India could bring everyone into the room and put a consensus document or an outcome document or an ambitious outcome document that drives the world forward on critical issues around SDGs, around energy, around finance, around economic stability, around certain other questions. It's time for new voices to enter the room. They can do it. I don't think the P5 or the G7 have that capacity to do it anymore. You need the Indonesians, you need the Brazilians, you need the Indians, you need them on the top table.
But the new Indian president is not very much a very new voice, is he?
Sorry?
The president of India is not very much a new voice.
The presence of India.
Yeah.
It's very new. You know, what you...
I think she means Prime Minister
Oh,
Modi.
the Prime Minister of
so
India.
yeah.
Is like 200 years old.
Oh.
That's
look,
not what I mean, but he's in charge for quite a long time.
No, I mean, that's not my point. I'm talking about India as an actor, not the Indian Prime Minister as within an actor in India. I'm talking about India as a player on the global stage. It's a very new phenomenon. I would argue that it's only at the turn of the century with the civil nuclear agreement.
But then who's gonna be, like, maybe you find an example. Who should be this new voice?
I have just told you that it's time to dismantle the P5 and have a new arrangement.
No, like a real name.
I've just told you 3 names. I think it's time to bring a few countries from Africa, and we can think about Nigeria, South Africa. We can pick up a couple from that continent. You have India, you have Brazil, you have countries such as Germany, for example, by the way, even from the old continent. That why should the French and British be speaking on behalf of this continent? Or maybe you need to have an EU voice, a unified EU voice on that council. It's time to get the two out, and certainly bringing the Japanese and bring in the Indonesians who
That's going to be a big discussion table.
10 or 11 people, right?
Okay.
That's not that big for a world that is now 8 billion people. You had 5 people running a world when there were barely a handful of countries that were independent and free.
So
you did want a controversial panel.
I'm super happy about this. I'm just trying to find a way to, like, make sure that whatever we find at the end of this panel will actually get out, and we actually make it like something that we can deal with in normal life.
I mean, look. Let me just add something. If you read the recent IMF report, and now I'm coming back to, since this is a business forum, let's talk money. Look, the report suggests that over half, close to 60% of all global growth is now being contributed by countries in the developing and emerging world. So China, India, parts of Africa, Asia, they are contributing 2/3 of global growth, and this is going to remain a trend line for a long time. This is going to be the reality. They are the custodians of your continuing prosperity, even in this continent. Now, it is important that those who are contributing such large amounts to the world's stability and growth need to have a say in the table. Instead, what do we see? What we see is that global financial flows are still decided by 3 capitals or 4 capitals, most of them in Europe and US. Right? It's New York, London, Paris, and if you want to count a couple of regulatory bodies in Switzerland, it's they who decide how money flows. Climate action is happening in India, Africa, Latin America, and yet climate finance remains concentrated in Europe.
And whose fault is this?
Yours. It's your fault. I mean, look, if you control the bank and you don't allow financial flows to cater to growth potential, it's your fault. If I was sitting on the banks, if I was sitting on the taps of money, and if I was controlling those taps, I would have said it's my fault. If there's an unequal financial architecture, if there is a perverse financial architecture, you have to blame the managers of that architecture. The Paris Club is to blame, period.
But
there's no but. You are to blame. Now, what do we do about it? I'm not saying dismantle the architecture. I'm saying, yes, it is time to create partnerships with others and expand it, enlarge it.
You are talking about, like you said, you are talking about system that grew over years, centuries, and you can say it's the people who are sitting on there now are to blame, but you could also say maybe it's time to change the system systematically, like you said.
I'm saying that itself. If that gives you relief, let's do it. It's the same thing. Let's change the system.
Okay, and again, because you've also been speaking to a lot of countries from the global south, what would be a good next step to actually change that system where there isn't like? And the thing is, like, I completely do feel like everyone agrees with you that people like countries that have not been sitting on the table enough do need a voice that is louder than it is right now.
Okay, once again, thanks for making me seem cool. I guess, there is only one Samir Saran, but I'm really enjoying this because that's the voice of the Global South that I keep hearing wherever I go. Those are the points. And we sit in our silo and we just ignore it. And at some point, it'll come back to bite us. There is, however, other side to this discussion. One thing that unites the Global South is this opposition, justified opposition to the current system. One thing that divides them is a vision of the future. And there are very few countries in the Global South that, beyond the occasional fantastic G20 presidency, actually come up with concrete proposals, put in the investments, the diplomatic power to move things forward. The West, for lack of a better term, has made some proposals. Reform of the global financial architecture, to start off with. I'm absolutely with Samir that we need to change things to make global governance mechanisms attractive to the Global South, create stakeholders, pull them along. But it's not enough to just be against the current order. You need to present concrete proposals for the way forward. Some countries have done that. The Indian G20 president has done that. They have added the African Union to the G20. They've had other success stories, but it's not enough. Germany, the European Union, the West invests billions and billions in the diplomatic machines that keep the system running. And where are the Brazilians? Where are the South Africans? Where are those that are shouting loudest? I don't see enough of them to actually justify us just leaving the room and handing over the world, so to say.
So, question back at you directly. Why do you think that is? I mean, is just because we're too stubborn, just because we're too lazy to change things, or is it just because we're too afraid to actually that other countries could gain more power and we lose ours?
So, I think there is a very easy answer to that and a rather complex one. The complex one is that it's all of those things, maybe with the exception of the lazy bit. We are afraid of losing out. We are afraid of relative power shifts. We are afraid of a world order that takes away our structural advantages. And we have not yet developed trust in the Global South to actually get it done, to look beyond their borders. Because another point is, it is the West that is driving the Sustainable Development Goals. It's the West that is driving humanitarian action around the world. And it's definitely not the Global South. Now, the legitimate counter-argument is the Global South does not yet have the money and has enough problems at home to go abroad and solve things. And we do see Kenya going to Haiti and things like that. So there is an increasing amount of agency in the Global South. But again, I would say just not enough. Now the question is, are we leaving them enough room? Are we making it easy for them to enter the debate at the right level? Are we enabling them? Is that even our job? I think those are the questions we need to discuss.
Also, I wanna add one more point to the discussion, and I know you've been very outspoken about this. You said in an interview.
Never is outspoken.
I'm shy.
I've noticed. You said in an interview there is a creeping surrender to China in the world.
Not in the world, in Europe.
Okay.
Be specific. I said that it's time to now, perhaps for all of us who study geopolitics and security, to come to the conclusion that EU is not a security actor. Maybe we are assessing EU in the wrong way. Maybe EU is a mercantilist geography, and we should not be thinking about a strategic strand emerging from this continent. And it's our expectations that are leading to disappointment. And maybe Europe was always like this. That's what I've said. I've said it's time perhaps to consider EU as a non-security actor and to deal with the individual countries separately, based on those who understand where the world is headed and those who don't. I read the report produced by German industry on China, and they felt that it was a very bold report. It was not.
But is it then?
It was an apology to China that sorry, we are using these words in the first 3 pages. The last 10 pages were let's do business together and let's do it deeper and let's do it more. I think that was what the German industry report on China was, that let's talk about obfuscation of the reality that one day Uncle Sam is going to tell you, Germany, no energy from Russia, you toed that line. They will tell you no business with China, you'll have to stop then. But you are not willing to change your China fix. Your China addiction is the problem. You are in fact doubling down, and most of your industries are announcing larger expansion of investments into that country. Now, I'm not saying don't do that. By the way, we have grown our trade with China as well. In the last few years, we have 200,000 or 150,000 Chinese troops on our border, right? We are facing off even now. There's an active situation. It's not peace there. I mean, since it's far away, you don't realize it, but we have a ongoing situation on our borders, and we have still grown our trade simply because there is a certain amount of trade that is largely beneficial for the supply chain aspects of global production, and there are some critical sectors where we have banned Chinese completely. For example, we don't have TikTok in our country. But the Germans love TikTok, so TikTok is allowed in this country, right? Because that's your entertainment. I'm just assuming. Because we didn't think TikTok was any use to us, and we didn't want Chinese propaganda to be proliferating our society. We banned TikTok, we banned many Chinese apps, we banned them from our 5G networks, we banned them from our telecommunication and energy systems, we banned them from our infrastructure and coastal development. So we have taken certain sectors which are pragmatic for national security and kept them out of bounds for
But
actors.
seriously, like bans, because we've spoken about global free trade, is bans really the answer?
China, if with China you talk about global free trade, China laughs at you. China trades with you on its terms. China bans your companies from participating in their economy and wants you to be opening their doors to them. Seek reciprocity. That is the first free trade agreement, reciprocity. Give to the other what they give to you. When they don't give you that, don't give it back.
So much.
I like the Chinese too. I do a lot of trade with them.
What I'm asking myself is, because you said like most of it's been run by people and some Western capitals, if it's true that we surrender to China, especially in Europe, is it not actually the Chinese that run us?
They run who? They run the Europeans.
Well, like more or
Look,
less.
I don't think we have reached that level yet, but I can certainly say that there are enough reports coming out of this part of the world, certainly one that came out in the UK, how the entire R&D system of UK universities was actually building Chinese capabilities in critical technologies. If you look at deep tech, and that's a very broad term, but if you look at some 23 important technologies, there's an Australian report which says that in 18 out of the 23 technologies, China leads. Now, this has been largely built on the back of their being able to capture all your R&D and innovation centers around the world. They have funded Cambridge, they have funded Oxford, they have funded East Coast of America, they have funded perhaps even universities in this country. I've not necessarily looked at Germany, so I will refrain from commenting on it. But I won't be surprised that if a large part of your civil architecture is contributing to their increasing influence in key sectors. Second, they control your media. Chinese ads are very lucrative for most media houses that are suffering from bottom line problems. And Chinese ads ensure that criticism of China is muted in most of your newspapers and mediums.
That's not true. It's simply not true.
I mean, look, again, this is the report that comes out of your continent, not my reading. I'm reading out to you from a UK report that came out of, again, one of the authors is from the House of Lords, and I'm reading from that report. Now, like I said, I'm not speaking about Germany because I don't know, but I'm talking about this continent. And that report literally said that from research papers to media conversations to innovation that's happening in labs, today actually serves China's benefit. I've written a book on it. It's called Pax Sinica. Buy it. It's nice. It tells you how China is borrowing your boats to cross the seas. It's your boats. They are riding it.
I'm honestly very much opposing the fact that we're not critical on China in this country. I can't really say much about other medias, but we're not silencing on China just because they're supporting ads. So that's very much for my business, and I know I can speak for a lot of colleagues. So, but if we want to talk from problematic, let's say, trade partners to partnerships, maybe on the last 50 seconds that we have, what is a good partnership? I mean, like you said, US and India would make sense, especially, I think you've mentioned defense, space, AI technology would make sense. What do you think makes sense to partner? Who do you think makes sense to partner with?
You know, I think at the end of the day, if we believe that the world has become more transactional, which the Munich Security Conference believes, then the world has become a global marketplace of ideas. Then it is our Western ideas that, you know, are the more sustainable, the more fair, the more equitable in the long run. They are definitely the least attractive in the short run. And so I think partnerships that build on long-term benefit generation are the ones that we need to look at. Mm-hmm. And I think there are
like which one?
You know, to be perfectly honest, I think at the end of the day it is technology. It all comes down to technology. And at the moment, from a geostrategic point of view, we're making a huge mistake by being in competition more with our friends than with our real rivals. Mm-hmm. And that is absolutely disastrous. And here, I think, a true transatlantic partnership on technology, rather than trying to regulate each other out of business, would be the way forward.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. We did run out of time. The fact that I do love discussing and arguing would make me wanna do that again. Let's do that again some other time, maybe soon.
But you never asked me what's a good partnership, and I'm saying an India-EU partnership is the future.
Oh, that's nice.
Now that I love you all.
And an India-German one, even more important. But notice us. Now, I think we are getting lots of young Indian students coming to your colleges. Our relationship is going to change. The India-US relationship was built on smart Indians going and building that country and then building that partnership. And I think Germany is going to see that in the next 10 years as well. Mm-hmm. We are coming and we are going to be helping you grow faster and grow in the right direction.
And that's all we need, growth. Thank you very much to the both of you. Thank you very much. Thank you.